another exciting episode here at IT Pro TV. I'm your host, Wes Bryan, and in today's episode, we're continuing through our series within VMware. That's right, we're coming back with some more VMware Certified Professional version 6, and it's a part 2 on role-based access control. That's right, we couldn't get Don to stop talking in the first part, so if you missed it, go check that out. Don, how you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great, Wes. Ready to dive back in and finish up permissions. In the last episode, we kind of wrapped things up with me assigning some permissions at the global level, which meant throughout my entire vSphere environment. And that may be what you want, but you may want to be a little more granular than that. And so that's what we're going to pick up today, as being a little bit more specific. So let's recap where we were at the end of that last episode. I had created a user for Wes, and I had created a group called Help Desk. And I put Wes in that group. And so now we have this Help Desk group. And I created a custom role, which I called Help Desk. And that role basically gave people read-only access to the entire environment and allowed them to create alarms. So you could spot a problem and create an alarm, but you couldn't do anything about it. You couldn't clear alarms. You couldn't shut down servers or power them on. That's all you could do was create an alarm, right? This is kind of the thing you might want a help desk employee to have. Then we assigned some permissions. And when I did it at the global level. So we kind of created it globally. And I kind of wrapped up the episode mentioning how I had named the role based on a job function, but it may make more sense to name it based on what it does as opposed to a job function. So I might want to go back and rename that or whatever. And renaming a group is really easy. VMware doesn't actually care what the name of the group is. They use an identifier on the back end anyway. So let's say that I wanted to change that a little bit and make it where the help desk could read anything, but I might have another group like IT auditors that I also want to have that same permission. So I'm trying to make it make a little more sense. So let's go and rename that role that I made. Now, when I go in here, I've got my users and groups, and the group that we were working with was help desk. But maybe I've got another one called IT auditors, right? So I'm just going to come in here and create a group of IT auditors. And the IT auditors come in once a year and they audit all my systems, or twice a year or whatever. And I want them to have that same type of permission. They should be able to read everything and create alarms. They're just auditing, so they don't need to change things, but that's it. Well, when I created that role, if I go back up to roles, and if you're coming from the home screen, you go to the home screen, to administration, and then it's right here under access control. We've got roles. And so under roles, I can find that help desk role that I made right here. And I'm going to edit that. And I'm just going to change its name. So I'm going to call it read only and create alarms, right? So this is just like a modification of the read only permission that we've already got. This is the one that we made. And if I click on it, I'll see that summary of privileges, and we can see where it's got that create alarm privilege right there. That's what I want. And I want help desk and IT auditors to have that for the whole environment. Well, we did that at the global level. So what I did is over here on the left side, I went to global permissions, and we added it. So I can see help desk right here. Now notice it's still showing the old name. It hasn't refreshed yet. It takes it a little bit of time to refresh. Actually, it might not even be done creating it. If I look down at my recent tasks, it's actually not showing up in there yet. So it's probably, well, actually it should be done. Let me just go make sure I actually hit OK. I might have hit cancel by accident. It wouldn't be the first time that I've done that one, right? It's always a good idea to verify your work. So I'm just going to make sure that I actually do have a group called IT auditors, which I do. It's right there. And I'm going to make sure that I've got that role that's now called read only create alarms, and it is. Okay. I'm going to hit my refresh button up top just to make sure that it refreshes my screen so that I've got the latest data and so that I can verify things. All right, now when I go back to my global permissions, I can come in here and yeah, it still hasn't updated. Well, we'll manually update it. I'm going to go ahead and edit this one. I don't want help desk to be in a group in a role called help desk. I've renamed that role. On the back end, it's using a numerical identifier, and so it knows it is actually working. I'm just impatient and don't want to wait for it to refresh. I guess I could do a manual refresh, and oh, there we go. All right, well, that saves some time. So I hit that refresh button again, and now we've got it. Help desk is in the read only and create alarms role. All right. I want to add IT auditors to be the same thing. I want IT auditors to have read-only for my whole environment and be able to create alarms. And so I'm going to hit the little add button. And when I go to add, now I can punch in the IT auditors group. So I'll come in here and find them. And they are buried away in here somewhere. There they are. And so I'm going to add IT auditors. And then over here, I'm just going to make sure that I choose that read only, and create alarms right there, so they have the access. Now, last time I just went ahead and hit OK, but I want to point something out. I mentioned how permissions propagate. I'm applying this at the global level, and so I know that this is going to apply to everything throughout my entire environment. But what if I was applying this at the data center level, or on a folder level of hosts? How do I know what's inside of there? What's actually being affected? Well, if I know my topology, then I just know it, right? But if this is a brand new environment, if this is your first day on the job and you're about to modify permissions, you don't know what you're about to affect. And so VMware does this nice thing. They give you a couple of options right here to help with that decision. The first one is they tell you whether or not you want it to propagate. You could turn it off. If I turn off propagation, it will only occur to the object that I'm currently working on. Well, for me, I'm working on the global level, so I'm somewhat limited there. But if I turn this off, it will only apply right there. And see how my propagate column just changed to no? And if I turn that back on, propagates back to yes. So I can see whether or not I'm propagating out to everything underneath it. And then right beneath that, you've got view children. And view children is really useful. I don't want to do it here because I'm at the global level. View children is going to show everything, right? But later on, when we're working with a data center or with a particular host, what are these permissions going to trickle down to? We'll get a chance to see, right? Because you've got your vCenter server, and under that, you've got your data center. Under your data center, you've got your hosts. Under your host, you have your virtual network interfaces, you have your virtual machines, you've got your storage and your data stores, all the different things that are underneath the host. And so when these trickle down, it's trickling down to a lot of different stuff. And when I view children, there's going to be a lot when I'm at the global level. But when I take it down a notch and start working at a smaller level, things become different, right? So I'm going to leave that be here and just hit OK so that these permissions apply all the way up at the top. Okay, so there it is, permissions are up at the top, and now we're in business. Okay. Now, let's say that I've got more than one help desk. And, or let's not say help desk, let's say IT admins. Let's build an infrastructure here based on IT admins. So maybe my organization has more than one data center. I've got a North America and a European data center. And so I want to create separate IT groups. There's a North American IT group, and there's a European IT group. And I want the European IT admins to support their servers, and I want the American or North American admins to modify their servers. But I don't want the North American admins going and messing with Europe. And I don't want the European ones coming and messing with North America. They're separate. There are certain permissions I might want to give everywhere, but there's other permissions that I want to be specific to the data centers. All right, so now we're getting a little more granular. It's not global anymore. All right, so first off, I'm going to need to create the groups to do this, and then we can start to apply those permissions. So I'm going to go back to my groups, and I'm going to create 3 groups. The first group I'm going to make is going to be IT admins. All right, so this is going to be IT admins, and it's going to basically account for all of the IT administrators in my entire company. Right, so IT admins. Then I'm going to create another group, which will be called NA-IT admins. All right, so these will be my North American IT admins. Then I'll create another one, which will be EU IT admins. And these will be the IT admins just for my European systems. Okay, I'm going to go back and modify IT admins. IT admins are supposed to have all of my administrators in it. Well, when I hire a new IT admin in Germany, I don't want to have to add them to EU IT admins and IT admins. I'd like to just do it once. And so I can edit IT admins, or not edit it, sorry. I can go down to the group membership of IT admins, and I'm running out of screen real estate. I'm going to bump some of these little windows to free some room. I'm going to just kind of collapse them with the pins, and that way we got some more room on our screen. We'll be able to see this a little better. There we go. Remember, make the user interface work for you. Don't work around it. All right, so I've got my IT admins, and right down here I'm going to hit my group members button, and I'm going to add the EU and North American admins into it. Let me sort this. You can always sort these things alphabetically or by group, and it'll help you find what you're looking for a little faster. So there's EU admins. I'm going to add them, and then I'll find my North American admins, and I'll add them. So now I've got both of those groups listed right here. I'll just hit OK. And now, when I take a look at IT admins up here, you'll see I've got EU and North America. So when I want to assign a permission to all of my admins, I'll use the IT admins group. If I want to assign permissions to just North America, I'll use just North America. Or if I want it to be just EU, I'll use just EU. But I've got options. And when I hire a new admin, I just put them in their appropriate continent, and they'll automatically be in the parent group as nested groups. So at the global level, what we saw in the last episode, I went to administration and global permissions, and I assigned permissions there. So I might want my IT admins to have read-only at the parent level for the whole organization, right? And so I'm going to come in here and add that. I'm not going to add EU or North America. I'm only going to add IT admins because this is a global setting. This is something I want to apply to all of my IT admins. So I'm going to add them. Whoops, I'm going to try and add them. If I can get my clicker to click. There we go. So I'm adding those admins, and I'm going to give them read-only access. Just read-only, and that's it. Or maybe I want to do the read-only and create alarms. That just because I'm a North American admin, if I spot a problem in Europe, should I just ignore it? No, maybe I want to report it to them. So I might want to be able to create alarms too. So now I can report it to the European guys and they can go in and fix it. And vice versa. Maybe they spot a problem with my system and they can report it to me and I can go and fix it. So we'll give them that read-only and create alarms. And that's going to be set up and it's set to propagate. This is global, so it's going to trickle down to everything in my entire environment. All right. Now, let's go set up our data centers. Okay. So now I've got that created at the global level. The IT admins get read-only access with create alarms everywhere. Next, I'm going to go back to my home, and I'm going to go to host and clusters. And inside of host and clusters, I can see my vCenter server, and you can assign permissions at the vCenter server level if you want. It'll apply to all the data centers. Or I can start to create data centers. You'll see I've already got a London data center. We might want to change it to have a different name, or I'll just create new ones. So I'm going to create 2 new data centers. I'll create a data center called North America. Or, actually I can go a different way here. I'll create a data center called North America. Maybe I only have 1 data center in North America and that's it, okay? So I'll just create a North American data center. But maybe in Europe, I've got 3 data centers. 1 in London, 1 in Germany, and 1 in France, right? So I'm going to create more data centers for that, right? So I'll create a data center called Germany and a data center called France, right? So we've got more than 1 data center over there. And I want to assign permissions. Well, if I want to assign permissions for the European IT admins, there's 3 different data centers that I have to go to. I'd have to assign permissions 3 times. But you'll notice that I could also create a folder. So I could come in here and create a folder. And when you create a folder, I might create a folder called EU. And so now I can put all my European assets in that folder. And I could create another folder called NA for North America, and I can put my North American assets there. And I can assign permissions to a folder just as well as I could assign them to a data center like this. All right. Now, if I was in the native client, it would let me drag and drop. Well, let me do it in the web client. Oh, well, look at that. Isn't that convenient? All right, so I'm just going to drag old Germany and London. I'm just going to drag and drop these guys into that EU folder. And I'm doing this. This is something your end users will never see, but I'm doing this to help me with my IT admins, right? And, North America, I should have named it like a city, New York or something like that. Actually, I don't know if it'll let you rename this once you've created it. It's a little finicky about the stuff that you're able to change. I feel like you can't rename it once it's made, at least from the UI. So let me just delete that. I'll recreate it since it's empty. If it wasn't empty, what I would do is I would create a new data center with the name that I wanted and then just drag and drop the resources inside of it. That would make it easier. But I'll create a new data center here inside of North America. And this one I'll call New York, right? So this one's going to be in New York. All right. So now I've got all these data centers. And the cool part here is instead of applying permissions globally, I can apply permissions based on these folders or based on the data center itself. I might create a France IT admins, Germany IT admins, London IT admins, and then I could put them in the EU IT admins, nesting those groups and start applying permissions that way too. But I'm going to try and keep it just to the 2 that I've got, right? So I'll take North America here. And when you right-click on North America, you'll see where you can add permissions. And now I'm adding permissions to the folder and not globally like we saw a moment ago. And so I want the North American admins to be administrators on anything in the North America folder. So I'm going to go ahead and add, and I'm going to find those North America users, and, well, shoot. Why is it not finding that? My search is not playing nice here. All right, well, you know, I tried to use the search to speed things up and end up slowing things down. It would have been faster to just navigate down. So I'm going to navigate down and find my North American IT admins. And, oh, you know what? I'm looking at a domain instead of vSphere local. I'm looking in the wrong place. So here I am blaming the search, and it's my own fault. Remember, you've got this drop-down box up here, and mine was set to look at the local, the Windows accounts. That's why I couldn't find it. So I needed to switch back to vSphere. And so now if I just search for NA, there's my NA IT admins, right? That's what I wanted. So I'm going to add them. And you might be tempted to add the European ones, but I don't need to because their permissions are trickling down from global. So I don't need to give their permissions here. I can just add these guys, my North American guys, and I'm going to make them administrators. Now, when I do that, right down here, it's set to propagate to children. So it's going to apply to the NA folder and the New York data center and anything else that's inside of there, it's going to apply. They're going to become administrators for all of this hierarchy, but not EU, not France, Germany, or London, which is a city and not a country. Well, actually, I kind of mixed cities and countries at this point anyway, so what does it matter? So anyhow, the permissions aren't going to apply over there. They're just applying down here. So now I'm isolating those permissions, which is really what you want to do. And I can go ahead and hit OK, but if I'm not sure what's going to be affected, I can hit View Children, and now it's going to give me a list, what all is being affected. And I can browse in here and I can see the hosts and clusters, the VMs and templates, the storage, and the networking that's all a part of what I'm about to affect. And so now I get that big picture. I can see what's about to be affected, who I'm about to actually grant these permissions to. And in my case, it's exactly what I wanted. It was North America. And now I can go and do the same thing for Europe. And so I can just hit OK on that. And I can go to EU and repeat the same process. I'm going to add a permission. And once I go to add the permission, I can find my EU users. There it goes defaulting to Windows again. So I'm going to filter that down to the EU users. We'll get them added. And I'm going to make them administrators. And I can do View Children on theirs to see what's going to be affected. And I see France, Germany, anything inside of them. So inside of London, for example, I've got that server. And inside of that, I can see the virtual machines that are about to be affected. If I go to VMs and templates, I could see the VMs here also. They're going to show up, right? But not the other items. The storage and networking, same thing. You can drill down and you can get an idea of what it is that's about to be affected. And so that's fine. I'll go ahead and hit OK, and that's going to take effect. All right, so now I've got permissions assigned and they trickle down. Now, I could get really strict and say, you know what? I've got a particular server that I do not want those North American admins messing with. And so I can go down and I can find that server. So I'm going to go down under London, and I'm going to find that host. Here's the host, plab ESX01. And if I pull up its permissions, right? So when I go to edit the permissions on this account, and oh, you know, actually, it's a little easier if I just take the server and go to manage. That we can go to manage the permissions in here. And once I'm looking at that, I can tweak the permissions right here on the server. But notice right here, EU IT admins. I didn't add permissions to this host. They trickled down, right? That's coming from up above. And so over here, this column becomes really important, defined in. Where did EU IT admins get permissions to the server? They got it from the EU folder. Now I know where that permission came from. So if I want to change it, I can go to that folder and change it. Or if I just want to change it on this system, I can override it. Okay, you can take a permission like that one. I could add new permissions to extend people, or I could edit and change the role on the permission. And see the big warning that I get? The permission for the user group vsphere.local/EU-IT-admins is inherited from the object EU. Modifying it for this object will create a new permission for the object and not change the original permission. In other words, the original one will still be there, and now I'm adding to it. And that's where the no access policy comes in, is that we can take away somebody's access with no access if we want, versus trying to edit here where we're just adding to it. So you've got to be careful about how you assign your permissions and understand that they trickle down. And if you want to see what the actual permissions look like, you just go to the object in question, go to its Manage tab and Permissions, and you'll see what the permissions actually look like. And you'll see where I've got a lot of global permissions that are here, including IT admins as a whole. North American admins don't show up in this list because I never assigned them to EU. I assigned IT admins at the global level, and that's where these are coming from. So that defined in column, really important. All right, now I could still come in and I could add in the North American guys, right? So I'm going to come in here and add those guys in. And so we'll come in here and we'll search for that group, which will turn up eventually. And as soon as I have them, we can add them in. There we go, add North American admins. And we'll say OK to that. So now I'm going to add them in. And when I add them in under the role, I can give them no access. Okay, now no access is kind of special. It's a little bit different than the other privileges. When I give them no access, that's taking away their permissions. And so now, even though up above they would have had more access, now when I assign it, they're going to lose that access right here. And so IT admins for EU, they're administrators. And IT admins globally are read-only and create alarms, but North American IT admins are now no access. And it's applied to this object and everything inside of this object. So it even trickles down from here. If we edit that, whoops, if we can actually click edit, there we go. When you go to edit it, over here you can hit view children and you'll see what it applies to, and this is a lot more specific than what we saw before. I'm not seeing all those data centers and network and all that stuff. I'm just seeing virtual machines and application groups that are tied together, these virtual applications, and what's actually being affected, all the stuff inside of it. So kind of a neat way to handle that. Now, that's basically the solid rundown on permissions. We'll see permissions pop up again a few times as the series runs on, but these are the main ones that we do need to know for the exam. There's one more little thing that I want to point out that it turns up on the exam. It's a feature no one ever uses. Well, nobody that I know of. But when we create users inside of ESX, we can actually export them to a text file if we need to. And I know it sounds weird. We were talking about permissions, now I'm talking about exporting text files, but I just have nowhere else to put this, and it does show up on the exam, so I'm going to mention it here. Let's say that you've created a ton of users in vCenter, and then one day you decide that you want to migrate over to Active Directory users. You might want to export all your users from vCenter so that you can then take that data, maybe import it into Active Directory or something like that, or you just want to run off some kind of report. Well, you can do that. You can export what you've got, and it'll be available for you to be able to use in other places. So the way you do that, well, the first thing you do is you get out of this screen. And so I'm going to go back up to Home and Administration. And on the Administration screen, I'm going to go to my Users and Groups. And earlier I was in here and I was using the little plus sign to add people and add them to groups and stuff. But if you scroll around on the screen, you'll find where there's the export button. And I'm actually, oh, there it is. Sorry, I thought it was being cut off by my screen. It's being cut off by my giant head. Here it is. So see how it says I've got 16 items and there's this weird little button here? That's the export button. And so you can highlight users or you can export the whole thing. And it's got a few different modes that it works in. If I just click the button, it's going to go to export it as a file. And so right there I can export it as a file and I can save it to my desktop and it's going to save that. If I hit the little drop down arrow beside it, I'll see different options. And really it's just export all or copy all, right? Because I didn't select anything. If I had selected some stuff, the other two would be lit. But the difference here is instead of copying to a file, it can copy it right to your clipboard and then you can reuse it somewhere else. So for example, if I copy all and then I fire up something like Notepad, I can view that as soon as I get into Notepad. And in Notepad, I can attempt to paste it. There we go. And so what you see is group name, domain, description, users, vSphere local, and then it starts to list out all the user accounts that we've got and where they're coming from. It's not the most incredibly useful thing in the world, which is probably what you're thinking right now, and I'd agree with you. But it is possible and it shows up on the exam. So this is literally something I've never once used in production, but is testable material.
Well, Don, we appreciate you putting that last little tidbit in there. You know, it's kind of hard to figure out where to put some stuff when it's something off the wall like that, but
Yep.
we do appreciate it, and it does look like we're coming to the end of the episode here, but before we do, you got any last words you might want to say about role-based access control?
Don't trust your admins. It would be the main thing. And what I mean there is don't, not that you can't trust them to work on your servers, but don't trust them to properly assign permissions. Always go through and audit your permissions from time to time. Just pick an object at random and look at the permissions and look at what's been assigned and where it's coming from. And what you'll find is where people don't stick to applying permissions as high as possible, sometimes they go really low, or they assign permissions to a user instead of a group, and all of a sudden you have one user who has access that they shouldn't have. So you need to audit your permissions and document your permissions. Keep a record of them. You can use what's in vCenter, that's fine, but ideally, you'll want your own documentation that's a little more clear, a little easier to understand. Everything's in one place and you see it. Also, use change control. Change control where somebody has to approve making a change to permissions. That way you ensure you're never granting access to somebody that shouldn't have it.
Don, thanks for that great advice, and thank you to the viewer for watching. Signing out for IT Pro TV, I've been your host, Wes Bryan.
And I'm Don Pizzette.
And we'll see you next time.